class, and let's call it a word count class. And let's create a main method in it. Main method is something which is used to start the program, and that would be a starting point for any Java class. So what are the steps that we need to perform? We need to read the text, split it into tokens or words, count the words, print the word, its occurrence. So these are the steps that needs to be performed. So how do we read the text? Now let's kind of bring our source as a string. I declare a variable string and go back to taking the entire text that I showed you before and making that as the content of that particular string. So once we're done with this, the next step would be to split it. So let's define a method which is split words. The job of this particular method would be to split the text into words. So this is a method declaration, so let's make it a public method and not returning anything. In the job, it takes string as a parameter. So how does it do it? The only way we could split is splitting that into an array of strings, which I call it by a name of parts. We will use regex to do so, which would be using the split method on the string, and I'll use space as the separator, and this creates an array. So how do we kind of take this to the next step? So we need to store the contents of the split into a file, and we'll look at how we do that. So I have created a buffer writer to help write the output of the split into a file where the entire split tokens with a value of 1 would be stored as an intermediate step in our process. So let's save this and see how this program functions. The method was saved successfully, so let's kind of invoke the method in our main to fill in the functionality. So the job of this module is to split the text that was created. So we have an error. The reason being, as we're working in a Java world, we need to instantiate the word count class. There are various ways to do this. I'm going with simple instantiation of the class. With the instantiation of the class, our errors are fixed. So let's run this and see what happens. So I click on the run button. So the job of this was to kind of split that and write into a file. So I'm going to refresh source, and we have this inter text being created. As an intermediate steps, we can see that every word has an occurrence of 1, and that's an intermediate step. So we've been able to accomplish step number 1. For the next step, I create another method which is consolidate. So the job of this consolidate is to look at the occurrence of these words and try to count them. For example, is has one occurrence here, the second occurrence here. So when we consolidate, then count should be is comma 2 because it appeared 2 times. It's the same way it needs to do for all the multiple occurrences of individual words. So the job of the consolidate method is to read that intermediate file, store the contents. I'm using a hash map to store it. You could use any other means. This is only for simplicity. I store it into a hash map and start looking at every occurrence of the word and then add to it and then close it. So this performs a second job. So let's put that into the second phase of it as a consolidate method, which will do the job. So the job of the consolidate is to kind of consolidate it, but we have to have a mechanism. Let me fix this error. So we have to have a mechanism where we could also print and see the words. The consolidate does the job, but we wouldn't know. So even if I run this program, it is going to do the job, but I would not be able to see any results. So in order to see the results, I have outputted the results into out.txt under a output folder. This should give us the consolidated final output. So now that I've done it, let's try to run the program and see what we get. So upon running, I try to refresh on output and we see the out.txt file. Let's try to open it. So when we open it, here we see the consolidated answer where the words multiple occurrences are counted, like for example is is twice, then the is thrice, and so on. So what have we achieved so far in our program? So just to summarize, we have split the words, we have consolidated it, we have added an intermediate step of splitting those words. Then the final step, which is in out.txt, has the words being counted. So let's go back to our problem statement and let's see what we have achieved so far. So looking back at the approach, what we have completed is this step of the approach. We have just taken a simple text and we've seen the result. And we also have completed the second step where we are seeing the output in a file. The third step is extrapolating into a huge data set of around GB or TB kind of size. So let's look at finally what are the challenges that we are looking at. So the challenges. So what are the challenges? What if the text, which we have taken as a small string in our example, were like 100 GB file? So can I perform the processing on a 16 GB server? 16 GB of RAM is what I'm pointing at here. How much time would it take the processing for 100 GB on a single server? Is there an efficient process to do it? So let's see how we could kind of address this and how it was being looked at by various programmers and architects. What if this 100 GB file was split amongst 10 servers and processed, or it was about 20 servers and 5 GB size each was processed on individual servers, and we consolidate the outputs into another output which is a single server, like what you see in the picture here. The source file is split into multiple pieces and we run the split words method on the individual piece, which is like a 5 GB or less than that based on the number of servers you're considering, and taking the output and running the consolidate on another server to achieve the final result. So let's look at our program components. So what did we do? We had a split method which split the file, split the text in our case into multiple components and wrote it into an intermediate file. And there was a second component which did the consolidation piece. And finally there was a third component which was more about generating the sequence of events that needs to perform, like split words first, then the consolidate. So if we were to do these three components on every server on the piece that we saw in the picture before, that would be running multiple instances of the same program on multiple servers. So this is the whole concept of MapReduce, where the data is processed on an individual server and the output is consolidated on a different server. So in these components, The split words is the mapper, the consolidate would be the reducer, and the main method would be the driver.